Today I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to talk about how we keep our tanks healthy, how we keep our fish healthy, especially this time of year when a lot of people are traveling. We're gonna be heading out here pretty soon for multiple days, and what are the kind of things that I do before I leave to make sure everything is healthy, everything's gonna be safe, and we don't come back to a fish disaster. So give you a few pointers and the things that I do before I dip out. You also get bonus points if you notice that I'm using a new camera. Throughout this thing, I'm gonna need your help on a few different things, so just be ready for that, but check this out. No cut, no cut, boom! Okay, I had to cut it there because I was being super cheesy, but this thing is awesome. I've used the same camera for like the last 7 years, which kind of still blows my mind, but I got this new Osmo gimbal thing and it's the dopest thing ever. Like just the fact that I'm using the onboard microphone and I can just flip it like this and not have to do cuts and still be talking and flip my microphone around. I'm still getting used to it because I'm so used to like doing cuts with my talking and everything. It's kind of weird. But that is not why you click this video. So let's start with like the first thing that I do before I know I'm gonna be gone for a while, and that is feed my fish more food than normal. With really mature planted tanks like this, and even this betta in here, isn't gonna really matter if I'm gone for 4 days and he doesn't have food. But because I'm a nice guy, we're gonna make sure he gets some pellets a couple times a day just for the days leading up to being gone. And that's mostly gonna be a peace of mind thing for me. Like, this dude could be in here for a while without any food. He'd have little things to pick on, but bettas, you forget, like they're kind of strictly a carnivore. So I don't know how much this fish would be able to take advantage of the other things in this tank that other fish would. I'm sure if it really came down to it, like he could go through and find things that would sort of satiate him, but I like to sort of treat bettas a little differently. The big tank over here that we worked on in the last video is a different story. So this one I could be gone for probably 7-8 days and not have to worry about putting food into it. And that's just because all the fish in here are gonna be swimming around, picking at stuff. Like obviously there's a ton of algae in here that they could probably take advantage of if they had to. So the fish aren't gonna die. They might be a little hungry when I get back, but all is well. Like that's the example of a mature system though. So if your tank is a bare stock tank, or you're dealing with fish that are, bigger. I mean, I don't really know the first thing about Oscars or, fish kind of in that category, but I would assume those are fish that you really do need to be feeding a lot of the time, and you have to have people come over and help you do it. But most of the fish that we all keep are gonna do pretty well, especially in a planted tank for an extended period of time, like a week, maybe probably even longer than that. I feel like in the past, I've gone multiple weeks without putting any food into a tank and everything still being alive and being fine. Like, I think for the most part, we overfeed our fish a lot in this hobby, and it's just not something that you need to lose sleep over. I mean, that's just my opinion though. Like, don't take it as gospel. It's probably not 100%. There's always gonna be exceptions to that. But, leading up to something where I'm gonna be gone and nobody's here, I wanna just make sure that my fish are fed. They're gonna go on a little bit of a fast, which is probably a more natural thing than not, right? Like you have to think that fish in the wild, they're gonna go through periods where a particular insect is hatching and they're just gorging on it 24/7 all day. And then when that thing stops hatching, they're gonna go weeks, months, probably without having any real tangible food source. So they're gonna be picking for a super long time. Then something else hatches and then they gorge on that for a while. Now our fish, pretty much for the most part, aren't, wild fish, even if they did come from the wild. Even still, I like to feed them just a little bit more than normal. I mean, nothing crazy. I'm not going through and just like dumping food into all the tanks. I might just feed one extra time a day or give them a couple extra hits. At the end of the day, it just kind of makes me feel better about it, and then I don't have to worry about it as much when I'm gone. So I definitely think that is part of it. If you have a skimmer on your tank, quick little tip. You're feeding fish, you hit it and this thing is super clogged, so it's not gonna do what I want it to do. But what I like to do now is put a little feeding ring around it that's gonna block it from sucking anything in, and then you can just feed like normal. You don't have to worry about unplugging your skimmer or anything. Still dealing with a little bit of oil slick on the minnow tank, which is okay. It's not something that'll last for forever, but still kind of annoying. I've been hitting it with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide now and then when I remember to. And I think later in the video, we're actually gonna come back to this tank and add the fry from the summer. only like 6 or 7 this year, unfortunately. Kind of a bad yield, you know? We thought we were gonna have a lot more, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. I think next year we'll just for sure go for minnow breeding, so we have as many as we can for next season. But what about those disasters that can happen when you... Why am I doing this with my hands? If you're gonna be gone for 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, maybe you're gone for 2 weeks, then it might come across as this type of situation where you need somebody to come feed your fish for you. And maybe I've just had like a really bad experience with this. I mean, I obviously have, or I wouldn't be talking about this, but you know, if the person that comes to feed your fish isn't a fish person, you need to be super careful with that, because for whatever reason, for people that aren't into fish, it's really easy for them to feed way too much. Like, not just a little bit too much, but it's always way too much, and it's an amount that can be a problem. So if that is the case, there's some things that you can do to prevent that from being a disaster. And you know, you can get things like little pill cap things, put the amount of food in it. Don't just wing it and tell the person, oh, put a pinch in this tank, put 2 pinches in this one, because it's never going to be exactly what you're thinking. So that can help, and that's one of the reasons why I've been trying to work so hard to get these like handheld feeding devices on the way. And you know, maybe that'll be a thing that happens in this next year. I hope so. And if you have severe trust issues like I obviously do, you can always go with the automatic feeder route. So we have one right here that I haven't opened up yet. I have one out in Legit Fish Food headquarters that I've messed around with a little bit. I just haven't had much experience with them because I've never been in a situation where I had so many tanks that it was too annoying to feed them. I've never been that guy though. I like feeding my fish, and it's something that if I don't have to have another thing that's automated, I think that's also a plus. Like, there's always the possibility for the automatic feeder to get stuck, or maybe that's an irrational feeder that I have, like it's stuck open and it's just gonna dump food in and cause huge problems. On my big tank out in this room that we'll be in here in a little bit, I tried the auto feeder thing. This was actually one of like the first attempts that I could even remember trying this, but it just dumps out too much food. I put too small of a food in here, and then what happens is I just remember that I don't really need to have this solution. But that, again, that is something that you can use if you're gonna be gone for a week, 2 weeks. You don't wanna have people, you know, messing with your tanks and feeding your fish. I'm sure if I just took a little extra time to like figure out how to get this perfectly in the right spot so it didn't move, then it would be a good option. It's probably a really good one for a lot of people. The last feeding tip is one that I've actually never done before, but I've heard it works really great, and that is to just go with the Rapashi gel type food. Make up a little cube of it, like hydrate it or make it into the gel or however you do it. And then you just put a big old chunk of that in the tank. You're gonna be gone for, you know, a few days. And apparently it doesn't break down. It actually lasts for a while. I don't know if it has like a bunch of preservatives in it or if it's just the nature of the gel food. I have no idea, never done it, but I'm kind of bummed I didn't think of that a little bit sooner, because I think that would have been perfect for our rice fish to give them a little bit more food, because we're keeping them at a higher temperature and we're trying to get them to breed. So those are gonna be the food related tips. Let's move on to water quality stuff. Oh, where are my test strips? One thing that we wanna do, we've talked about this in a couple different videos, is make sure to know what's going on with your tanks, especially ones that don't have a filter. So I'm gonna pop that lid off. I wanna just hit the tanks that I know are kind of an issue right off the bat, just so we make sure we don't have anything in the water that like 5 days could, you know, turn into a problem. Particularly on our little Fry no filter tanks, we wanna make sure we know what the nitrogen concentration is, because we don't wanna come back to, you know, big nitrite concentrations, big nitrate concentrations that could be impacting the growth rate of those fish or just the overall health of them too. And on top of that, if a tank is giving you issues with nitrate, then that could be why you have issues with your algae. And that's not why we have this issue right now. I kind of explained that in the last video, but that can definitely be something. If you're having higher concentrations, you gotta dip out for 5 days, you come back, those concentrations have doubled, then that's a recipe for where you can come back to a tank that has like a little explosion of algae, which is obviously not what you want. And actually, the double-edged sword of the feeding more before you leave is that you could then have more nitrogen accumulation while you're gone and not able to do anything about it. So I think if that is an issue that you're dealing with on a particular tank or a set of tanks, then there could be a strategy to actually feeding less before you leave to then not have nitrogen accumulate as much. Kind of like how when you buy fish from good places online, they're gonna fast the fish before they send them, so that way there isn't nitrogen accumulation in the bag while it's shipping. But that's just one of the things about this hobby, that it's not super black and white. Like, you could do it either way, and either way you could still be fine, but just know that that is a thing. And so, like, for example, on this tank, on our beta aquarium, we have a decent amount of nitrate still in this aquarium somehow. I have no idea. Everything in this should be sucking it up. It's not because I'm feeding this fish too much. It's not because there's a bunch of fish in here, because there isn't. It's just one of those weird things that I can't explain and makes no sense. Something in here must be dying out of some plant or something. But anyway, regardless, we'll do a water change on that tank. Our little guppy fry over here, we also have a little buildup of nitrate. Still kind of getting used to this gimbal, but like you can see, what is that? Like, you know, air quotes, ballpark 50-ish. So we'll do a good 50% water change, or maybe probably even a little bit more on this guy. And then we might actually drop the feeding down a little bit. This is where it gets complicated, because we want these fish to grow. They're small. There is stuff in here they can pick at, but because the goal of this fish, like, they're not an adult fish, they're not gonna be as good on that diet of like having to pick at stuff, right? Like, because we want them to grow. So it's kind of that thing where it's hard to really know what the best move is. I think we're just gonna keep feeding them a little bit more, so that way they're extra full when we leave, and that way when we come back, they're gonna be hopefully a little less hungry. I'm gonna continue to go around the room here, do test strips on all the tanks, leave them on the sides. I don't care about any of the things above the nitrogen, so that's okay that we do kind of a wonky dip like that. Avoid the food that's still sitting in this one. Everything is harder one-handed, guys. Don't forget. Being a fish tank YouTube guy isn't what it's all chalked up to be. While we let those finish up here, how does the mic sound? Because I'm sort of biased in that I've been editing using the same camera, the same microphone system, everything for like forever. Like I said, like 7 years. So when I take this into my editor, it sounds so much different to me that it bugs me. But I think it sounds good. I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments, and tell me if I'm crazy, if this is just fine. Because I don't know. I hope it is. This is the most convenient way to film stuff. I'm in love with this system. It's actually motivating me to do more of this like in-person kind of thing. It's weird. It's so weird. It's like I'm not even looking at a camera right now. That might be a good thing, or it might be a bad thing. I don't know. Time will tell, but we're gonna mess around with a microphone too. I just love being able to do that. Like, that is so cool. Why don't we talk about this tank? Because that was the last video. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but just in case you didn't, we did a big trim on the Monte Carlo trees. We're trying to save this tank without ripping everything out and starting fresh. The algae down here is still kind of crazy, and I'm leaning towards having to pull this out and start fresh with the hairgrass carpet. But the Monte Carlo is looking promising. The algae treatments that we use look like they've been kind of working. I just have to be patient and let this thing get dialed in. It's gonna be several weeks before we know like how this thing is going to be with the way that we set things up, or rather tweaked things. Nothing's really starting to grow back yet, but that's, I mean, it's been 3 days, so it's just gonna require a little bit more patience. By this time next week, we should be seeing like new buds from the Monte Carlo, if that's gonna happen, which I think it will. This tank's gonna get a big water change. This tank's gonna get a big water change. This tank's gonna get a big water change. So is this tank. So, oh my, I mean, this is why we test things, right? This is the only way we know. So this guy has a little bit of pink. He should be fine for 5 more days. And then our big tank is also totally clear. There's actually a little bit of nitrate in there. I wonder if that's from the decomp of some of the dying algae. That could definitely be why, because that's the first time ever in a year that I've ever detected any nitrate in this thing. Kind of crazy. Don't worry, I'm not gonna make you watch me do water changes all day, but when I was prepping to do this one, I thought like, hey, it would be nice to trim this guy because the Rotala is just like growing crazy and these guppies could use a little bit more swimming room. But then I thought, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be gone. Do I wanna make a big change like that to the tank before I'm not gonna be here? On this tank particularly, that's not enough of a change that would make me uncomfortable. So I'm gonna cut it down. I know what it's gonna do. It's gonna start to grow back in the next few days. And there isn't like a big dramatic shift in the water chemistry that can happen. If anything, it would be a positive thing. Those plants starting to grow are going to start to consume more nitrogen than like they are now. At least in theory, right? So we don't actually know that for sure. I haven't tested to see if that is actually a thing, but on paper, that should be what happens. Now, whether it goes down like that is still one of those like things that we never will have a complete answer to. But something like this is a change that you definitely wouldn't want to make. So modifying the CO2, tweaking things, going in here, and like fine tuning anything, you wouldn't want to do that right before you leave. You'd want to make sure that you did it, you know, at least a few days beforehand. And so that's the case on this tank. We did those changes like, I don't know, 3 days ago. We still have a couple days before we leave. So I'm comfortable. I'm not going to be tweaking anything here, but that's something that you definitely want to avoid because an error in that department could kill your fish, right? Like a change like trimming some plants isn't going to be, I don't think, something that could have the repercussions of fish dying. But again, you know, that's just my opinion on it. All right, water changes are all done. We got all the tanks up to the level where I want them. That's another thing, you know, if you're gonna be gone, make sure that all your tanks are topped up at the right level. For a lot of aquariums, it doesn't really matter. But like over here on this guy, which we're not gonna be doing a water change to, I just wanna make sure that my skimmer is operating properly and that it's set at a level that will, you know, still continue to work if the level drops down a little lower. So I do need to clean this guy out, and then I'll just make sure that everything is set up properly to where if, like, you never know, when you're gone, maybe an extra couple days pops up, you don't want it to evaporate down, and so that your equipment isn't going to be working, and that goes for like HOBs or anything. Like maybe you have a filter in a tank that already doesn't have a lot of water, so you don't have that much room before the filter input starts to suck air. So just little things like that. Again, it doesn't really matter for all aquariums, but if you have a special tank with special kind of equipment set up on it, make sure that everything is going to be okay before you leave, just in case. But beyond that, I mean, for this room at least, I don't have much more to do. Like, I'm comfortable. I know that the nitrogen isn't going to build up super high in these tanks in, you know, 4 or 5 days. If it was going to be longer than that, like if I was going to be gone for 7+ days, then we're getting into the territory with at least some of the aquariums with smaller fish that aren't super mature, like there isn't a lot of microfauna in those aquariums. Then it's a situation where I am gonna need somebody to come over and feed just so I don't lose my mind. Whether or not that's 100% necessary for your fish's survival is a little up in the air, but yeah, for me at least, that's what I would do. But we do still have a whole nother room with a bunch more fish tanks we gotta deal with, so let's go check those out. Turn this loud dehumidifier off. So with normal big adult fish, or even just any fish in a mature planted tank, you don't have to really worry about being gone for 4, 5, 6, even 7 days, probably even longer than that, just because there's so much stuff for them to pick on. Like these guys, not even worried about it, even though they're bigger fish, they're, you know, rainbow fish, there's still gonna be plenty of things for them to pick on. So not worried about those guys, but in some of these smaller tanks, like we just kind of set these up recently, they're not super developed, like there's not a ton of stuff. There's some algae down in here that these fish can pick at, but because they're young fish and we're feeding them a little bit more than normal because we're trying to get them to grow, I just feel more comfortable if, you know, we feed them a little bit more than normal before we leave for a few days. I've been feeding a lot of this Medaka food that we got on Amazon because it's just so tiny, like it fits perfectly for these little guys. These are some of my bigger fish, but I don't know, there's still some small ones sprinkled in here. I think they like it, like they all zoom up to the top. And it's really fun to watch them eat through the portal. So we just go through, and hard to do one-handed, but don't fall over. Kind of sprinkle some in to each portal. Even the bigger fish, they'll eat on it too. And I typically only do this twice a day, but I've been trying to get out here and do it 3 to 4 times a day before we leave, just to make sure everybody's super full, right? The larger guppies will feed on this stuff, which is kind of nice. For the larger guys, I do give them a little bit of legit nano because it's perfect for them. So where's my trout goodieeds? They like this stuff. Always zoom up to the top and just pound it right away. And the other big important thing we have to do before we leave is make sure the water quality is good on all of our tanks, because we don't have filters on everything at the moment. So the bottom tanks, I know, don't yell at me, they still don't have a filter down here. So we monitor these ones especially closely. These ones up here don't seem to really have much of an issue with nitrogen. Like everything's cycled, like we have our sponge filters set up and everything in here is good. We just have to worry about the nitrate, which has been accumulating really slowly. So that's a good thing. That means I don't have to do as many water changes, which is nice. But like down here on our bowl of rice fish and minnows that we also need to do something with today, you know, we want to be checking that because we no longer have this really nice green water. We had some here in this little mini guppy spawn berth, I should say. I always get that wrong. I don't think I'll ever change, but like no more green water in here. So we got to monitor with test strips. That's why you'll see a couple. Where are they? There's like one over here, a couple up here for nitrate. The tanks that don't have filters, like everything on the bottom and the bowl sitting on the ground, those get checked more frequently than the ones up top. But I run through, I do a test strip on all of them, and then I just leave the test strips on the ones where I need to do the water changes. So that's why you can see those sitting there, and that's how I don't forget about them. Ay, this place is messy. I'll talk about this in a second, like why I have Easter basket stuff here, but here's my water change buckets. This is all fresh water, so these two here are marked because they're remineralized, so they're the guppy water, and we use these on some of them. And then I have one 5-gallon thing of just soft water from my tap. So that goes into the tanks where we're trying to get the fish adjusted to the lower mineral water, or you know, ones that we aren't doing stuff important with guppies. And I only have 3 5-gallon buckets, so I need to figure out a better system because that does limit my ability to do water changes, which is kind of annoying. But I haven't had like a super high demand for changing a bunch of water. This also helps because it's, you know, brought to the room temperature, which is like 78 in here. So the water's a little bit cooler than that, but it's enough to where I don't have to worry about, you know, anything straight from the hose being really cold and shocking the fish. I need your help on this one. So this, now I'm using the microphone that comes with this new camera setup, and I think it sounds worse than the onboard mic, which is really weird. Like it sounds like I'm almost underwater. Let me know what you think. For this part, it makes it really handy because I can step away from the camera and I can come down and grab one of the tubs that I need to do a water change on. And now I just have both hands to do stuff, which is super, super nice. Now I just need to find my siphon across the room. I don't know, I think it was like when I do side-by-side audio comparisons, it just doesn't sound as good, and I don't know if I can make it sound any better. But if it's not that weird and it sounds just fine and you like it, or maybe you like it better than the onboard mic, I would really appreciate the feedback because it's something that I constantly get hung up on. I've been listening to my same voice through the same microphone, through the same camera for like 8 years, and it's hard to like change that in my brain. But if it doesn't matter to you, I would really appreciate knowing that. Changing the water on the guppies is super easy. Maybe you can see this. This is my like big 4-liter jug thing, and I just use this, or you know, a 5-gallon bucket, like whatever, it doesn't matter. Get the mini python and just do a simple old water change. And it's kind of nice not doing this on rice fish, like super tiny ones, because those are easy to suck up. These guppies are pretty much impossible to suck up, which is really nice. But snails, on the other hand, when you suck them up like that, they are gonna stop the siphon, which is not the funnest thing ever. Got to get those guys out and then start over. So we try and avoid that, but it's kind of impossible sometimes. And he's still in there. Go through and try and get most of the poop and anything else that might be contributing to why there's a little bit of excess nitrogen in here, but it's mostly just change the water. That's the only thing I'm focused on. I try and do like at least 50%. In this case, the nitrogen was a little high, so I think we're probably gonna do close to like 80% if I had to guess. Go dump this guy out in the lawn. Oh, hey. Then we grab some of our guppy water. And because that guy is a little bit bigger, we got to use the smaller guy to fill up the big guy. Took me a while to learn that I should just put the thing back where it's going to live before you fill it up. But put it back into the right spot, grab your fresh water. That's all the exact same, minus the nitrogen, and fill her up. And since we got a little left over, we'll just put some in here with these guys. They didn't need a water change because their water somehow is still really clean. The process is pretty much the same for the other tanks that we need to do. So these two, the trout goodeids down here, and then we do have some other, zoom across the room here, some other tubs with tiny little rice fish in it. So exact same process that we just did on that little guppy tub, but we have to be a lot more careful because some of these fish are super, super tiny. We will suck them up. So once we do our drain into like our bucket or whatever we're draining into, I just have to go through and make sure that there's nothing in here before we dump it out, which it happens pretty much every time. There's at least 1 or 2 dudes that make it into this. So same exact process. Whew, okay, water changes are done. Buckets are filled up and in place. So again, the annoying part is that I have to do this every single time. Only got 15 gallons. I need to have like a big bucket over here probably. Can I adjust this? Thank you. If I had a big trash can in the corner that could hold like, you know, 30, 40 gallons, 50 gallons maybe, that would be sweet. But in the meantime, I mean, this works. So these got filled up, they got dechlorinated, this one got mineralized, this one is the soft tap water. All my little tools that are gonna be going in between tanks on the experiments got sanitized and they're just kind of chilling here. Keeping snails out of this is super important because we don't want to introduce those into any of them. I know I've been casually mentioning these experiments here for a while, but I thought I would just show you this one. This is one that I started a month ago, so the tank on the left is legit fish food. This one is food BB, we'll call it that. I had 2 male guppies that were basically like twins almost. This one was maybe a little smaller, but he had better coloration, like a darker red on him when we started out. Maybe you'll be able to see this in this little snapshot. But the important thing is, a month later, same amount of food, same everything between the 2 tanks. This one, obviously a little bit more cloudy, right? This experiment was gonna be kind of like a 2-in-1, like we'll be able to show the progression of nitrogen in the aquarium and then also the look visually of the 2, but then also like, hey, it'd be really cool if we got this guy to color up and be just as dark red as this guy. So it was kind of like a coloration study at the same time. So far that hasn't happened, and it could just be like a genetic thing, right? Like, I mean, a fish is gonna be the fish that it's going to be, you know, kind of like no matter what. Food could definitely influence that, and you know, a lot of foods make the claims that, hey, this is gonna color up fish. And so we just want to try and like see if we can prove this stuff, right? Like on a fundamental level, on paper, the food has stuff, like whatever food it is, our food, anybody else's, has things in it that enhance color, but like, does it actually do it? I don't know. I want to see if these things are actually real life or if they're just all marketing BS. I just think it's cool to be able to do these side-by-side comparisons, experiments, whatever you want to call them, and just highlight like that there is a difference that will happen in your tanks depending on what you put in it food-wise. So that's all I want to show of that. I mean, obviously we're right in the middle of things. It's only been a month. A lot of these things that I'm doing take forever. Like we've been working on a couple experiments, trials, whatever, for like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and I just haven't really talked about it because they take so long. I don't want to come to any conclusions until we know for sure, like, hey, this is a thing. Obviously I have to do replicates of everything on top of all of this, so it's gonna be a while before you see like a fully put together piece of content on it, but hopefully we can have little sneak peeks like this along the way. That's one of the reasons why I have these down here. So this is just Easter basket mesh stuff, like it's plastic, not paper. And it's apparently an old breeder trick to help hide baby fish when they come out of their parents or their eggs or whatever. So we have our 2 females in here. I removed the male just because I wanted to increase the chances of fish not eating baby fish. You'll see we do have one little fry in here that I guess he was like one of maybe a couple that came out of these fish early, but these 2 females, the metal tails, they are very pregnant. Should be any day now before they birth all their babies, and hopefully it's a lot, but we have this material in here now that the babies can go hide in. Corey was the one that told me about this. I was thinking about just getting like a bunch of yarn mops, right? Like with these little experiments I'm doing, I don't want to introduce any live plants because that could impact the water quality and other things that we're looking at. So it was gonna be yarn mops, but then I thought this was a pretty cool way to do it too. Like, obviously it's a plastic thing. It comes from, you know, God knows where. So I made sure to soak it in water really good so that hopefully there isn't any weird chemicals being leached into the water. But this stuff looks like it would work really well to hide babies, and it can't be that much different than things like these fake plants that I've been using in all the setups. So I don't know, it looks like it would work pretty well. It's basically the non-natural version of using like a bunch of pearl weed or something like that. I also have a couple tanks inside that are just like these that we need to put here. We're gonna do a female breeding experiment with some of these fish over here. But again, don't want to talk about too much of that. But yeah, if you guys want to try out the food, we still have a bunch of community and a decent amount of the bottom feeder stuff. We are unfortunately out of the nano, and we're working on a restock right now, working on some smaller bags. Going to introduce a 1 ounce size so that people can just get into the food for a little bit cheaper. Or for any of you guys that just have like 1 tank and you don't want to buy, you know, even a 2 ounce bag, that was our smallest size, still kind of a lot of food. It lasts a super long time. So that smaller bag should be hopefully here. I don't want to say before the holidays, like, because things with bags, getting the newer designs done and then having to make the bags and then have them sent to the place to get the food put in them and then back to me, and then it always takes longer than I want it to. But hopefully that won't always be the case, you know, as we continue to move forward through all this. But yeah, if you want to support legit fish food, you want to try it out, we got free samples on the website. And yeah, I think your fish are gonna love this stuff. So I have this shelf down here that's not really getting a lot of use, and we have to maximize space in here because there's not a ton of it. I think this is gonna be the spot of some new rice fish. I know we're still making rice fish, but it's a game that never stops. But this might be a good, you know, we could borrow the light for this so these guys could share it, or we could just get another one of these things. I kind of put this shelf together to be like experiment stuff and then rice fish stuff on these two like not as high ones. So we can move these fish, we can move these guppies over there, and then these guys are actually breeding again. So let's check out some mops. Check out, we got a decent amount of eggs in here. A lot of these are fresh because we just put in the heater. Got the aquarium co-op guy in there. And so I think the water temperature, I don't know what that said. What does that say, 76? Let's hit it with the gun just to make sure. I think it's cool if you hold it sideways. 80, so yeah, these guys have been putting out a lot more eggs after I got that temperature up, which makes sense. The lighting's on for a long time. They think it's summer, so they're gonna do that. We don't wanna leave these in for too much longer because if the fish hatch out, the parents are just gonna eat them. So we need to start swapping our mops, putting them into the tubs, and then putting in fresh spawning mops. I'm not sure, the eggs should be pretty resilient to like a change in water chemistry, but I think we're still gonna do a test strip here and make sure everything, I can't remember if this is a soft water or hard water thing. I think it's soft, but we'll just do one of those to double check. Like I said, I don't think it really matters like if this was hard water and then we put the spawning mops with the eggs into a soft water. I don't think that would impact anything, but rice fish are so hardy, I don't think they would care at all. But we're just, you know, we try and do the best over here. We try and make everything as comfortable as possible, even if it's pointless. It's looking pretty soft, but maybe I've poured a little bit of the harder water in there kind of as time has gone on. I don't think it matters. Here's all my rice fish stuff hiding in here. Got all these mops, we're all ready to go. Got a million tubs. I guess because we have a little bit of nitrate in there, we might as well just do a water change. So I'll pull water out of this into here, then cut it with some fresh stuff, and then fill this guy back up. So now when we come back from Thanksgiving, we'll be able to see if the rice fish did what we wanted them to do, which I think is the coolest part about rice fish, like being able to come home and then seeing like, oh, how many eggs, because we know we put in fresh ones. That's so cool to me. That makes them just worth it times a million. Such an engaging fish, for me at least. I don't know, I fell in love with these guys. You guys, if you've been following along, you know. And then like with the koi specifically, I think most of the koi are in this tank right here, and I don't even know how many koi I have. Because none of these are showing any orange on their head. Red cap, like whatever you want to call them, right? I still don't even know if I have any. It might just take a little bit longer, but you'd think even by now you'd start to see a little bit of orange on them, and I think I see that over here in the mixed rice fish tub. Like there's, I don't know, it's gonna be impossible to see, but there's like one of them, I think it's this guy right here. He looks like he has a little bit of orange on him. He's gonna dip away super fast, but like out of all the ones that I bred, I didn't breed a super ton of them or anything, but only one out of like roughly 100 fish maybe that I have. That's crazy. The ratio should be way better than that. It's supposed to be like 1 in 15 or 1 in 20 are gonna have that orange head, but I don't know, I think maybe it probably just takes a little bit longer and I'm being impatient, so I need to fix that about myself, but I don't know. That's part of like why these guys are so expensive, is because that's how they work. Like not all of them are gonna be what you want. And that's the same for a lot of these guys. Even the midnights in this tank, there's like a few that are kind of like super whitish, and so those aren't gonna be ones that you wanna continue to breed. So we still have to figure out like how we're gonna do the culling of these fish. I don't wanna kill any fish because I'm kind of a wimp, so I think what I'm gonna end up doing is just giving a ton of them away. Like I have a neighbor that has a pond that they would be good for once they're adults, and then probably just give a bunch to, you know, my local fish stores that I go to so they have some stuff to sell. Even like some of the nice ones, you know, because I'm gonna get to a point where I have too many fish and not enough tanks. But yeah, I don't know, that's something to figure out another day. But all I know is that we got it a little bit more clean in here. Can you see? Like we got a little bit more stepping around room. Still kind of a nightmare, but the reason why this tank is so low is because I'm kind of planning on moving it. So I've let a lot of it evaporate. The filter's still on, but it's super clogged up. The fish are fine. That's the tank that has all the correct tetras in them that I've had for like 8 years or whatever. But I think this tank is gonna be moving inside. That's roughly the plan, and then I'll get some more space. We can get finally our airline situation figured out. I got this really cool like Japanese piston pump, but it's still kind of loud, so I want to hide it down over here, run a line of PVC all the way across, and then keep this where it is, but then just have more workspace here is kind of the goal. And then that'll finally free this tank up to get aquascaped. If it's inside, I have a little bit more motivation to try and make it look good, but right now it's just chilling. It, you know, it looks gross. But yeah, I think I've reached my limit as far as hotness goes in this room, so let's grab some fish and let's move inside. Almost forgot about this disaster of a tank. I just checked it, you know, because I haven't changed the water in this aquarium in like 7 months, like literally just top offs. It had 5 nitrate in it, like craziness. It's gotta be all of the super healthy Sylvinia up here. If anybody knows why this Sylvinia is so happy in this aquarium, let me know. I think the only thing that it could be is like it's just getting the perfect wavelength of light or the right duration or something, because I have it in other tanks where it's not doing good and it just dies off. Like the relative humidity in here is the same as the places that it is as well, so I don't know, maybe it's just the magic guppies in this aquarium. So this thing is on the list. It needs to get redone. I hate it, but I also kind of love it because it looks so bad but it's so good at the same time. But yeah, that's my take on how to prevent fish disasters from happening in your tanks pretty much all the time, or even, you know, specifically when you're gonna be gone. That was sort of the highlight of the video. I hope this footage was okay and the audio didn't totally suck, or else I just filmed for a bunch of hours for nothing. But, you know, let me know down in the comments what you thought of this kind of style of video. And with the new camera and everything, I'm curious to see if maybe you didn't even notice. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it too much. But anyway guys, I think that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Thanks again, once again, for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.